Faites l'appel, Monsieur le greffier, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le sénateur Russier,
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Osef, Monsieur le sénateur McLean,
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Gorse,
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Farnham, Monsieur le sénateur Balash, Monsieur le sénateur Green, Madame le sénateur Ferguson,
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre,
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent,
Présente.
Madame le connétable de Sainte-Marie,
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Won,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade, Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Martin,
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Sauveur, Monsieur le connétable de Grivel,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité,
Présent.
Madame le député Martin,
Présente.
Monsieur le député Southern, Madame le député de Grivel,
Présente.
Madame le député Hilton, Monsieur le député Lefondre,
Présent.
Madame le député de la Trinité,
Présente.
Monsieur le député Louis de Saint-Sauveur,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier, Monsieur le député Noel, Madame le député de Saint-Jean, Monsieur le député Higgins,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Masson,
Présent.
Madame le député Pinel,
Présente.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Martin,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Bryans,
Présent.
Madame le député de Saint-Pierre,
Présente.
Monsieur le député Rondeau, Monsieur le député Mezek, Monsieur le député Louis de Saint-Hélier,
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Saint-Won,
Présent.
Madame le député Dublin, Monsieur le député Labby,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Wickenden,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Bree,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Norton, Monsieur le député MacDonald,
Présent.
Monsieur le député de Sainte-Marie,
Présent.
Monsieur le député Truscott,
Présent.
Monsieur le député McClinton.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui établit le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, à qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes les délibérations soient accompagnées de ta bénédiction, réussissent au bien et soulagement du peuple qu'il t'a plu de commettre à leur soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par la mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé, Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le sénateur Osef,
The vote.
Monsieur le sénateur Farnham,
Présent.
Monsieur le sénateur Balash,
The vote.
Monsieur le sénateur Green,
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade,
Malade.
je jure que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé.
I'm not sure that's possible, actually, Deputy, as you didn't answer the roll in the first place.
You're absolutely right, sir. I do apologise.
Je jure que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Deputy Southern. Madame la Deputy Hilton.
Present.
Monsieur le Deputy Tadier. Monsieur le Deputy Rondel. Je jure que Monsieur le Deputy Rondel est tellement indisposé qu'elle n'a pas assisté à son exposé sa santé. Monsieur le Deputy Mezek. Madame la Deputy Dublé.
Sir, may I ask that Deputy Doublé
Therefore
is
excused.
excused?
Monsieur le Deputy Norton.
Present.
Les États sont constitués. First of all, welcome back to all members after the Christmas break. I would like to give notice to members of the swearing-in date for the new Lieutenant Governor, which is going to be on Monday the 13th of March. If you'd please enter that into your diaries. And the new Lieutenant Governor will be attending his first States meeting on Tuesday the 14th of March. When I think he will be exercising the customary right to speak on the first occasion he's in the States, and it's expected that we will then adjourn for a brief half hour or so in order that he can meet members informally outside. There will be a formal dinner on that evening to welcome the Lieutenant Governor to the island.
So could I ask that the defo be raised on Senator Joseph?
Proposed defo be raised on Senator Joseph. Defo is raised. Very well, there is B and C as on the order paper. Under D, the draft Employment of States of Jersey Employees Amendment number 8, Regulations Amendment lodged by the States Employment Board on the 23rd December, P105. The Anne Alice Rayner Fund Alteration of Purpose Amendment P116, lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. The Future Hospital Funding Strategy P130 Amendment lodged by the Connétable St John. The Future Hospital Strategy Amendment to the amendment lodged on the 13th of January by the Minister of Treasury and Resources. The Composition and Election of the States Assembly Amendment lodged by Senator Joseph, P133. Draft Bank Recovery and Resolution Jersey Law, P134, lodged by the Chief Minister. The Draft Bank Depositors Compensation Jersey Law, P135, lodged by the Chief Minister. The Draft Law Society of Jersey Amendment Number 4 Law, P136, lodged by the Chief Minister. Vote of No Confidence States Employment Board, P137, lodged by Deputy Higgins. States of Jersey Law 2005 Amendment, States Members' Qualifications for Election, P138, lodged by Deputy Higgins. The States of Jersey Police Force Chief Officer and Deputy Chief Officer Regulations, P139, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. The Draft States of Jersey Police Force Police Negotiating Board Jersey Regulations, P140, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. Senators and Deputies Candidates Qualifications, P1 of 2017, lodged by Deputy Tadier. The Criminal Justice Compensation Orders Amendment Number 3, Jersey Law, lodged by the Chief Minister. There's nothing under E or F or G or H. Coming to questions, written questions. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy Cruville regarding the extension of freedom of information legislation to state-owned companies. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding the minimum wage and a national living wage. The Minister for Infrastructure will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of Grouville regarding the undertaking of design competitions for architecture and landscape schemes. The Minister for Infrastructure will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of Grouville regarding the Department's procurement policy for landscape architects tendering for state's work. The Minister for Infrastructure will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of Grouville regarding the architecture firm selected to design the landscape scheme at La Collette. The Minister for Health and Social Services will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Hilton regarding implementation of the recommendations of the Williamson report. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding income inequality. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding the withholding of income support. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding a review in respect of primary health care services in the island. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Hilton regarding population policy and the work of the Housing and Work Advisory Group. Minister for Education will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Hilton regarding the future use of the existing police headquarters in relation to Rougebillon School. The Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mesek regarding the resignation of the Department's Chief Officer. The Minister for Treasury and Resources will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mesek regarding high-value residents. The Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mesek regarding the introduction of legislation which has had an effect on promoting economic growth. The Minister for Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mesek regarding the impact of policy changes inspired by the 1001 Critical Days Manifesto. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Mesek regarding the proportion of new jobs taken by workers with less than 5 years residency. The Minister for Education will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Tadier regarding the turnover of staff in non-private primary schools. The Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Tadier regarding the play park at Les Kenvay playing fields. The Minister for Home Affairs will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Tadier regarding the conditions placed on Mr Bronx and his owners. The Minister for External Relations will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Tadier regarding the mutual exchange and recognition of driving licences between Romania and Jersey. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Tadier regarding the population of each parish. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Southern regarding the sanction system for those on income support. The Minister for Health and Social Services will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Hilton regarding waiting time for consultant appointments. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding the impact of falling wages on living standards. The Minister for Treasury and Resources will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding structural pressures on states' finances. I don't remember so many written questions. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding expenditure on the housing component of income support. The Minister for Education will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding a cost breakdown for Highlands College. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by the Deputy of St John regarding grievances filed by States of Jersey employees. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding 0-hour contracts with no minimum hours guaranteed. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the termination agreement with the former Chief Officer of the Department of Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the role and powers of the State's Employment Board. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Deputy Higgins regarding the termination of contract of employment of Mr Al Witchery. The Minister for Health and Social Services will table an answer to a question asked by Senator Ferguson regarding the properties of the La Sala bequest. The Minister for Health and Social Services will table an answer to a question asked by Senator Ferguson regarding plans to move patients from Orchard House to Clinic Pinel. The Minister for Social Security will table an answer to a question asked by Senator Ferguson regarding potential plans to freeze the allowances for patients in residential and care homes. The Minister for the Environment will table an answer to a question asked by Senator Ferguson regarding the application of heritage policies to residential properties. The Chief Minister will table an answer to a question asked by Senator Ferguson regarding the Oxera report on the Jersey gas market. Thank you very much. One can tell members have had a Christmas break. We now come to oral questions. The first question is Deputy Kevin Lewis to ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. What steps, if any, is the Chief Minister taking to ensure that the people of Jersey get a fair deal with regard to gas and other heating costs?
Chief Minister.
Sir, could I ask Senator Asif to answer this, please? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. As set out in the strategic plan, it is a key priority for this Council of Ministers to make sure that all markets, and particularly energy markets, work well in consumer interests. The Deputy, I hope, will have read the Oxera gas market report, which I cover in my written answer to Senator Ferguson. Whilst their expert and independent analysis clearly shows that regulation in the gas market was not justified at the time, there are concerns that it is an expensive way to heat one's home. Moving forward, I intend to continue to work with CICRA and suppliers, including Jersey Gas, and the support of the Consumer Council in championing consumer choice and providing easily accessible information on energy prices. Last Friday, I met with the chairman of the Consumer Council and the chief executive, together with Deputy Norton, to understand how we can support them in their valuable work. In addition, we intend to consult the Housing Minister, the Environment Minister, and the Assistant Minister for Economic Development with responsibility for the Consumer Council to consider how homeowners and tenants can be supported to secure optimal deals on energy costs. At no point in the future are we ruling out regulation, sir, and I will continue to work with CICRA to work out exactly what should be done to empower consumers with information and choice.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his reply, sir, which is very encouraging. So many families and senior citizens can no longer afford to run a gas central heating system and turn it off unless it is really, really cold, even though they have to pay a connection charge of approximately £400 a year. As infrastructure costs are met by the consumer, if more and more people come off gas, thereby increasing the burden on the remaining, surely there will come a tipping point where gas will no longer be viable and be far too expensive. Does the Minister not agree?
Absolutely, sir, and I absolutely understand exactly, and that is why I am signalling that with now the good information, we can make sound policy decisions. And I agree that there is a risk of a tipping point being reached. And I absolutely accept, I'm just looking through my notes, so I will circulate to members an informal calculation of what it costs to heat different homes. The Deputy is quite right. I would say that there should be nobody in Jersey that should not be able to put on their heating. But gas is expensive compared to others, and it is particularly those on low incomes and tenants, particularly in the town and town areas, that are particularly affected by that. I've had a constructive meeting with the Consumer Council, who share my views absolutely, and I thank Deputy Norton for his support, and I look forward to engaging with the Deputy. We now have a data set on which we can move forward, working with the Housing Minister, Environment Minister and other authorities. Thank you.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Given the advent of cheap natural gas from the USA, which is a third to half the price of our current LPG gas, will the Minister ask CICRA and Oxera to rework their reports to make the comparison?
Professor Sir John Vickers, in his foreword to the competition report that I instigated in taking responsibility for competition, said competition and regulation was hard, and that is a matter for both government and the regulator. It is perhaps surprising that it is a government report that members have had before them in explaining exactly what the facts are, despite our attempts to get the facts from CICRA, who were not able, apparently, to find the information which gives now members the facts. I don't agree that the comparison is necessarily relevant, although I will, or somebody will, find out exactly what the relevance is. We cannot have natural gas in Jersey. There is nowhere to plug in a natural gas pipeline. And there's also some shipping issues which are also at things. We have to compare what we can realistically compare. And the previous questioner asked, I think, the very important question is what is the future of energy in Jersey? Can we have 3 supply networks, or is it better to actually consider what the long-term implications are? That standing charge for gas customers, the cost is £536, according to my calculations, compared with Jersey Electricity of 68. Oil is, of course, different. These are the issues that ministers must address, but we must be realistic and not overpromise. We cannot have natural gas. We cannot get it to Jersey cheaply enough.
A supplementary, sir. That wasn't what I was asking. I was asking that the Minister should actually ask CICRA and Oxera to look at it. They are shipping liquid liquefied natural gas across to Scotland now, and there will be more liquefied natural gas being shipped. We need to look to the future. Will the Minister undertake to get the work done?
The Minister does not, the Assistant Minister does not require any encouragement, if I may say so, to get the work done. That's what the Assistant Minister has been trying to do, but was not able to get the facts from SICRA. We must focus on priorities, sir. We must focus on what we can do, and the analysis and the information I have, I am willing to listen and engage with any member or any other person discharging this function, will effectively look at the evidence. And we must prioritise our time in order to get the best deal for consumers as soon as possible. There has been too much talk of gas pipelines and other potential investments of 80 million or so to bring natural gas or others. If shipping is possible, we'll look at it. But I have been told it isn't, and I wish to deal with expert advice.
Minister, can you try and keep your answers more short? Deputy Sullivan.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister not accept that, in fact, what we're looking at is an example, prime example of market failure, and the Minister, once again, refuses to act in any way whatsoever and appears to be waiting for the gas company to go belly up before taking any action? Is it not, surely, time to regulate this market and involve ourselves in this market failure?
Sir, I would remind the Deputy that it was the Council of Ministers at its first meeting who prioritised energy and energy use and energy value for money, as the question relates to Deputy Lewis of St Saviour. The Council of Ministers needs no encouragement, but we need facts, and we need to prioritise what we can do. There was no case for regulation. That was effectively a wild goose chase. What needs to happen is we send a very clear message that we may regulate if the case is required. I urge the member to read Professor Sir John Vickers' report on competition and actually look at who should do what when. Government and this Assembly has a responsibility to do so. We should not regulate gas. At the moment, there is no case, but we are engaging constructively with all energy providers to provide best deals for consumers, and I'm assisted greatly by the Housing and the Economic Development Assistant Minister in finding out proper solutions rather than over-promising.
One supplementary, if I may, sir.
No, I'm sorry, Deputy, we've got 17 questions to get through. Deputy Tadier, one question and then final supplementary.
The priority should be concise answers, sir, surely.
And that you're absolutely right, the answers need to be concise.
Thank you, sir. Is the Assistant Minister aware of a practice by Jersey Gas of demanding or requesting a £250 deposit from rental tenants only who have never held a gas account before? And if so, does he think this is reasonable and enforceable?
The answer to the first question is yes, and the second question is part of the ongoing discussions that we need to have with Jersey Gas. Now we have a proper analytical report.
Well, you can do it, Minister. Final supplementary. Very good, thank you. We come to question 2, which Deputy Lafondre will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister, as Chairman of the Estates Employment Board, advise when the first attempt was made to lodge Amendment number 8 to the draft Employment and States of Jersey Employees Jersey Regulations 2000 and blank, and outline what consultation, if any, had taken place with the Crown officers prior to any such initial attempt?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Discussions took place with Crown officers at a number of points last year, and then we lodged this particular legislation. It is perfectly reasonable, of course, to remain open to constructive input as we have done through that process. A new and clear way forward on this matter has been arrived at. I have spoken to Crown officers about this, and I've also confirmed to the Chairman that I will attend upon them at their request and look forward to going into the details of this particular amendment and the proposed solution.
Yes, sir. I note the Chief Minister's response, but can he just confirm that on the 19th of September a document was presented to the GREF with the intention that it should be approved for lodging, that the document included provisions relating to Crown appointees, and that the Crown officers had not been consulted on this?
So it may not be the case that there was consultation on this particular amendment, but on the principles, particularly in regard to a Judicial and Legal Services Commission, there was consultation. But there is a very detailed timeline that I will provide to the panel, and I am more than happy to consider their concerns in bringing forward a new proposed amendment.
Constable St John.
Thank you, sir. Could the Council Chief Minister also confirm that His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor had not been consulted at this time?
So the amendment, as written, dealt with Crown appointments, that is the appointment of Crown appointments, not the individual Crown appointees.
Final supplementary.
I think so. What I'd like to ask the Chief Minister to...
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. I'm so sorry.
Overlooked again. Oh dear. Yes, would the Chief Minister explain the late amendment lodged on the 23rd of December of the amendment to the amendment and outline the thinking which led to that amendment?
So the Senator will know from reading the main proposition what the thinking was, and it's a change of remit for the Appointments Commission. It's about the appointment of the new Chief Executive Officer and the involvement with the Appointments Commission for external bodies, and at the same time the amendment to the amendment that the Senator is referring to deals with Crown appointments. I don't think, sir, that there should be any difficulty in understanding why that would be appropriate and why it is appropriate. The question that has been raised is about whether it sits with this particular piece of legislation or it is better to reserve some of those issues for a further piece of legislation, which will be the Judicial and Legal Services Commission legislation.
Supplementary, sir. Why did the Chief Minister consider that it was appropriate to include the Crown appointees in the late amendment posted on the 23rd of December?
So it was late because conversations were being had about it and concern being raised about it. But it was agreed as in order on that date, sir.
Yes, sir. Some might say, sir, that the failure to consult with people who are being significantly affected, or the posts significantly affected by the amendments, shows a level of discourtesy. How would the Chief Minister like to respond to that, sir?
So in politics there's disagreement. Not quite every day, but most days there is disagreement. The principle that there should be independent oversight of these appointments is absolutely correct, in my opinion. And the question then became about whether that is appropriately dealt with in this piece of legislation or it should be appropriately dealt with in a different way through a different structure. Currently, in statute, there's no provision in place with regard to the Appointments Commission with regard to Crown appointees. There is the matter of previous practice, but nothing in statute. That needs to be corrected, in my opinion, but I am prepared, and I've said I'm prepared to work, and I've already worked on a solution going forward, which I have offered at their request to brief the panel on.
Come to question 3, which Deputy Martin will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Following the Assembly's adoption of P53/2016, will the Chief Minister update members on how he proposes Assistant Ministers should be elected after the 2018 elections? Will he ensure that this information is in the public domain before the Assembly decides whether or not to reduce the number of states members? And if not, when will he make this available? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Since the agreement of P53 last year, officers in my department and the Department for Community and Constitutional Affairs have been developing a number of potential options for improvements to the machinery of government, centred around the role and processes for appointing assistant ministers. These options focus on refining our current system so that it is more inclusive and are due to be discussed over the coming weeks, including discussions with current ministers, assistant ministers, PPC, the Chairman's Committee, and with the Deputy herself before a proposal is brought to this Assembly for debate. That process will take longer than the timeline for debating the change to the composition of this Assembly at the next state sitting.
Supplementary, sir. Well, it's very relevant because after I asked this question, Senator Roseff lodged an amendment and it actually states my proposition P53 if members are amenable to adopting new ways we work. Well, sir, I'm not a lot of things I am, but not psychic. And I really think the Chief Minister should let us know what these propositions are before we debate whether we go to 38, 44, or pick another figure out the air. Doesn't he agree, sir?
So backbenchers or any member of this Assembly actually are enabled under standing order to lodge any proposition that they wish within this Assembly. The Deputy knows that my officers have been undertaking this work. I've had a brief conversation with the President of the Chairman's Committee. He was quite clear that he wished for me to consult with them and discuss with them prior to lodging any amendments. And it was also recognised that actually consulting with PPC, with other assistant ministers and ministers prior to lodging of them was an appropriate way forward.
Deputy
Thanks, sir. Ministers currently get to choose who goes on scrutiny, but the Assembly has no say whatsoever in who becomes an assistant minister. Arguably, there are assistant ministers who have more power than some ministers themselves. Now, does the Chief Minister accept those statements, and does he agree that actually it would be helpful for future reference and the impending debates to have the information that Deputy Martin is seeking?
So I can see that it would be helpful, but without agreement it would not be helpful, because it would just be an idea around which many members may disagree. But the premise of agreeing the proposition of Deputy Martin was that we would do this work and then we would consult and we would deal with the difficult issue of whether assistant ministers should be elected by this Assembly to their offices, and actually what is the role of assistant ministers and how that can be used to deliver a more inclusive system.
Deputy Mesley.
So notwithstanding the other changes that the Chief Minister might like to potentially see in the way assistant ministers are appointed or elected, could he confirm whether or not he personally remains committed to the principles of the Troy Rule?
So the Deputy knows that you can't change the remit and function of assistant ministers without a change to the Troy Rule as it is currently written. This Assembly, when it set up the Machinery of Government subcommittee under in the previous Assembly, wrestled with that issue, and on balance they decided that they wanted to keep the system as now is. But throughout the period of this Assembly, many members have said that the system is not inclusive, that they don't feel involved in what ministers are doing or who is making the decisions. We cannot have both of those. We need to make a decision. And that is what the proposal will do, and that is what we will consult with members upon.
Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Yes, when the Chief Minister says he decided to consult, did he have psychic powers himself in that he knew that there would be another proposition coming forward in this case from a backbencher, for a major reform of the way we elect the body? And did he accept in some way that it was okay to wait for this reform whilst we discussed this new reform, which is a major one?
No, sir, it was expected that the officers in the two departments would do their work. They were also, of course, we know, working together with PPC on the reform of this Assembly. And that is what I expected to happen, that PPC would come forward with a proposal to reform this Assembly and that my department would come forward together with Deputy St Peter's Department, would come forward with proposals to change the machinery of government. That's slightly been thrown, that timeline, sir, with Deputy Andrew Lewis lodging his proposal to reform this Assembly.
Deputy Greville.
In the Chief Minister's considerations, clearly, with regard to the Troy rule, is he also going to consider the doctrine of collective responsibility? Because clearly you will not be able to have both. So if the Troy rule goes, then the doctrine of collective responsibility will also have to go. Does he appreciate that?
So I appreciate that they are connected and they need to be considered. You could take the other argument, that is that the collective responsibility only applies to ministers around the table and not to other assistant ministers. But they need to be considered together. The Deputy is absolutely right.
One supplementary.
Yes, sir. I'm very disappointed. For the last 5 minutes, we've been knitting with fog. The Chief Minister says there is a proposal. He knows what the proposal is, and so do 10 other people in this Assembly. What the rest of us don't know is what that proposal is, or even the bones of it. But we're going to vote in 2 weeks' time to go down to 38 or 44 members. Will the Chief Minister please call an urgent briefing for States members to see what it could look like? Because they must know, and if they don't, why would we be debating to change the whole of the way we elect ourselves again? Thank you, sir.
So every time we've had a debate on the composition of this Assembly, people have said they can't vote for changes to the composition of the Assembly because they've got some idea that they'd like to change for the machinery of government. Every time we've brought forward changes to the machinery of government, members of this Assembly have said they can't vote for the changes to the machinery of government because we don't know what the Assembly is going to look like. So I don't disagree with the Deputy that it would be far better if there were opportunity to consider what the changes to the machinery of government might look like. But I cannot see that it will be possible to do some consultation which is right with the Chairman's committee and other members prior to a debate on the 31st of January. If that debate were to be deferred by a fortnight, then of course I think there probably would be opportunity to have consultation and to brief. And that particular proposal I'm prepared to consider with Deputy Andrew Lewis, sir.
To question 4, which Senator Ferguson will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether or not Orchard House is expected to close, and if so, when?
Minister.
Thanks, sir. So, as I stated in my written answer to the Senator's written question, number 35 on the subject, my department is intending to move out of Orchard House to mitigate risk, but more importantly, to improve the environment and the service which the acute mental health service and inpatient assessment centre is required. So, we do not have an expected date for closure, as Jersey Property Holdings are currently carrying out a feasibility study to redevelop parts of Clinic Pennell, with a view to moving the services from Orchard House. However, we are hopeful that we'll be in a position to submit a planning application before the summer.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, sir. Yes, does the Minister not understand that it will be a fairly capital-intensive change at Clinic Pennell, because the two types of patient should be kept separately as recommended by the Royal Society, the staff required for dementia have different qualifications to those required for the Orchard House patients. You know, why is this even being considered? You know, the Royal Society say these two types of patients shouldn't be mixed, so why is the department even thinking about it?
The Royal Society do not say that the two types of patients shouldn't be in a nearby or the same facility, just that they should not be mixed on the same ward, sir. I wish the Senator would get her facts correct.
Well, we come to question 5, which Deputy Southern will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Following the presentation of R3 of 2017, does the Chief Minister or his Assistant Minister accept the criticism at paragraph 4.5 of the report regarding the ministerial response to SR4 of 2013, which quantified risks relating to the Jersey Innovation Fund as 20% of loans not securing their objectives and 10% not being repaid, whereas financial directions quantified the risk of the latter as 50%? And if so, does he personally accept political responsibility for the response's shortcomings?
So I'd like to ask Senator Joseph to answer this question, please.
Thank you, Chief Minister.
And sir, for the avoidance of doubt, I will be answering questions and making a statement with your consent after the questions without notice. Thank you, sir. Following approval of P124 and the subsequent appointment of the Chairman and the Board, the level of risk of failure of loans was considered by the Chairman and the figure of 50% established. The conclusions of the CNAG report under paragraph 15.2 highlight that the objectives of the fund were not translated into clear objectives, and there was an insufficient focus on managing risk for the fund as a whole. So I am extremely disappointed that the body, this assembly, established to manage what was always going to be a high-risk endeavour, failed from the outset to establish appropriate levels of governance in terms of the implementation and the roles of officials. Throughout the debate of P124-2013, members consistently and rightly referred to the risk involved in this type of venture and the need to have external expertise to ensure it was managed appropriately. It is a matter of deep regret that the risks identified by this Assembly in approving the proposition were not acted upon by the Board and officials, and until recently, this Assembly was not able to be completely informed.
Supplementary.
Does the Minister accept that the figures of 20% and 10% actually predated the proposition arriving before this Assembly, and therefore the Assembly, in effect, was misled?
Sir, as far as the proposition of P124 and 2013, it needs to be recalled that, of course, there was a proposition which was effectively overseen by my predecessor, respected predecessor, Senator Maclean, in discharging economic development, and effectively then that was handed over to officials to implement. I think the Auditor General's report, which is not particularly new to me, is absolutely clear in 4.5, and the sequencing of that is clear. There is a sequencing of the percentage of risk which is set out in the CNAG's report, and there's a clear disconnect between the original and then the implementation.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thanks, sir. Does the Assistant Minister believe there was ever sufficient focus given to risk? I'd like to draw his attention to the form that was included on page 42 of the original proposition. The risk paragraph is tiny at the top here. I know that there was many more documents supplied by applicants, but does he believe that there was ever sufficient focus given on the element of risk when this whole idea of the Innovation Fund was first founded and presented to the States under P124?
So I think there are a number of questions, legitimate questions to be asked, and the Deputy Andrew Lewis stands as the Chairman of the PAC, who now receives the Controller and Auditor General's report, which is, of course, a report on the actions of officials and accounting officers, and he no doubt will be calling accounting officers and officials before his panel rightly to ask those questions. There are matters which need to be debated and discussed properly of the responsibilities of ministers and accounting officers, and I stand ready to assist the PAC and Deputy Bree in terms of his responsibilities, who succeeded the Deputy of St Martin in having done an oversight and scrutiny of that. There are questions that need to be asked. There must be no doubt in any member's mind that I had significant concerns about this, but as my statements later on indicate, I found it almost impossible to actually do that. But yes, was I aware of risk? Do I care about risk? As an ex-internal auditor, as a Treasury Minister, absolutely. Am I satisfied? Absolutely not. I'm dismayed and disgusted, and I share the anxiety of many members of this Assembly and the public.
Deputy of St John.
Thank you, sir. The question refers to financial directions. I understand financial directions are the responsibility of the Treasurer. So at the time of the Assistant Minister being the Treasury Minister, was he aware of this change to 50% made in financial directions?
No, sir, I was not.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And I'll come back to my supplementary question, which asked the Minister clearly to identify whether the quantified risk of 20% and 10% predated the proposition concerning the state's agreement to it and therefore misled the states.
So I do not think that the state was misled. There was a substantial good piece of work which, when I was discharging the functions, the administrative functions of Treasury Minister, having taken forward this proposition, which was worked on by Economic Development and then scrutinised at length by the then chairman of the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel, there's clearly a sequencing of an increase in that percentage which happened. And those matters need to be addressed, and further timelines need to be made on that issue. The Controller and Auditor General is clear in her remarks, and I became increasingly concerned about those issues, as is obviously, I hope, clear to members. I don't believe the state was misled, sir.
Come to question 6, which Deputy Higgins will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. May I ask a question of the Chair? I'm not sure if it's a point of order, but would it be sensible if the mover of the statement is willing to give that now, because it seems that many of the questions that are being asked may be at least partly answered or helped by what is contained within the statement?
I think that it would be appropriate to deal with oral questions, which has a time limit to it, get very complicated if we do anything else, and I would proceed in that way. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. In light of the report presented by the Controller and Auditor General, R3/2017, in relation to the Jersey Innovation Fund, what responsibility, if any, does the Minister hold for addressing any of the weaknesses in relation to the roles of accounting officers identified in the report, and if none, why not?
Sir, I'm not sure if the Deputy meant to phrase his question exactly in this way, but as far as I'm aware, the Controller and Auditor General's report makes no criticisms of the roles of accounting officers. An accounting officer for the fund was appointed from its inception, and the functions of the accounting officers are clearly laid out in the finance law. The report does contain criticism of how the fund was operated in practice. These criticisms are more about performance than they are about role.
Supplementary, sir. The Minister is quite correct. It isn't phrased exactly as I put it. It has been modified. What I would ask the Minister is, as the Treasury Minister and responsible and having officers on the Innovation Fund, what responsibility he takes. Since he became Treasury Minister, he must have reviewed the operation of the Innovation Fund. And could he explain, for example, why he made no changes to the working of it when he first reviewed it, which has been heavily criticised by the Controller and Auditor General?
Sir, I should point out in the early stages, in fact, it was my predecessor who put in place in July 2014, and quite rightly so, Financial Direction 1.2, which sought to mitigate risk and improve controls with regard to the operational terms of reference of the Innovation Fund. And that was a point I noted was picked up by the Controller and Auditor General, and does demonstrate a welcome improvement in those areas. Since that point, sir, there have been various statements that have been made. There's an annual governance statement, which is made by the accounting officer of the fund, the person responsible for the oversight and management of the fund, and that is reviewed on an annual basis, as the Deputy will know. On top of that, internal audit was asked to have a look at the operation of the fund in 2015. That was as a result of part of its programme put in place by or agreed by the Treasurer, and I might point out by the Chief Executive of Economic Development at that time. So there were a number of checks and balances put in place to look at the operation of the fund, which later resulted in external accountants being brought in, BDO, to look at the post-loan performance and so on. So the fund was being managed, and it was made absolutely clear when problems began to emerge that no further loans would be made without the precise and exact acceptance and agreement of the Treasurer and the Chief Executive of the States, which is why no new loans were made on this fund in 2016.
Yes, sir. Does the Treasury Minister accept the statement made by the Assistant Minister with responsibility, the Assistant Minister to the Chief Minister, that the Chief Minister has delegated responsibility for innovation to me, and I am therefore responsible and accountable to this Assembly for the fund, including all ministerial decisions, past, future and present, that are associated with it? Does he accept that statement, and does he feel that that's where responsibility lies?
So I have no reason not to accept a statement made by the Assistant Chief Minister. I think the Deputy was quoting directly from the statement made to this Assembly. With regard to responsibilities, the Chief Minister has made it absolutely clear that there is going to be an investigation into the roles and responsibilities of all ministers involved in the Innovation Fund. The outcome of that review will be published, and I think that is the appropriate moment to answer the second part of the Deputy's question.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
So the Treasury Minister will be well aware that one of his officers was appointed to sit on the Innovation Board. Can he comment, though, as to why that officer had voting rights when he was supposed to be maintaining independent oversight for the Treasury? Does he think that was appropriate? And also, was that officer actually ensuring that various elements of the Financial Direction number 1.2 here, which is the whole document on the Innovation Fund, was he ensuring that those directives were actually being followed, and is the Minister content that they were?
So I don't wish to go into too much detail around the particular specifics of the question that the Deputy is asking, for the reasons that, as well as a review or investigation into the roles of politicians, the Chief Minister has also stated that the Chief Executive of the States of Jersey has also commenced an investigation into the roles of officers in relation to the Innovation Fund, and as a result of that, I think it would be unwise for me to make detailed comments about the roles of specific individuals at this stage.
So, supplementary? So the matter was a matter of policy. Does the Minister accept that it's inappropriate when you have independent oversight sitting on that board, that that person has a vote on that board? Does the Minister think that's appropriate? And if he didn't think so, then why was that allowed to continue?
Sir, I believe that it is a difficult point with regard to having voting rights. The Deputy is quite correct. The individual was there to provide and to fulfill a specific function, and that function, one could argue, would compromise that particular role. However, it wasn't picked up and wasn't acted upon. I can't add anything further than that.
Senator Folkes.
Thank you, sir. Given that the problems highlighted by the Auditor General's report are similar to those highlighted in the Public Accounts Committee reports on the Battle of Flowers grant in 2007 and the Can Be Done grant in 2012. And after each of these, the Assembly was assured that lessons had been learned. What does the Minister intend to do to make sure that the lessons learned are being applied, particularly, for instance, with regard to Digital Jersey?
Sir, as other ministers have said, there is a degree of significant dissatisfaction with the fact that the performance of this fund, in particular with regard to its oversight and management, have fallen short of standards that one would expect. We have checks and balances in place to ensure that funds, and in particular public money, is managed appropriately. In this case, it appears that there have been some failings with that regard, and that is completely and utterly unacceptable, as I have stated and others in the past. There have been and were improvements put in place with regard to the Innovation Fund compared to others, so lessons in some respects have been learned. But then again, the oversight and management and implementation, which is key, is really critical to ensuring the performance and the safety of public money in this way. And I think it's in that area that we need to focus our attention in particular.
Deputy Sir John, and then final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. This is the second time that a report has identified that there has not been compliance with financial directions. What confidence does the Minister actually have in the way that financial directions work or do not work in the States, and what confidence can we therefore have that this can actually, we can have assurance that this won't happen again or it won't be as bad?
As I mentioned earlier, sir, a new financial direction was put in place specifically for this fund, Financial Direction 1.2, which was welcomed by the Controller and Auditor General's report. Again, it comes back to my point about implementation, management and oversight. It's all very well, as the Deputy was effectively alluding to, that we have financial directions and other requirements in place for the proper and effective management of public funds. If these fall short, then it is ultimately, and that's why we have the role of accounting officer and the responsibilities and liabilities associated with that function of accounting officer. That's exactly why that is in place, to make sure that all functions are undertaken in an appropriate way. And if that doesn't happen, then of course under our system, it is appropriate that the accounting officer and others are held to account. And the person to do that, of course, would be the chief executive of the state, and that shortfall would be ultimately responsible through the chief minister to this assembly.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Coming back to my second question, does the Treasury Minister take any responsibility for any of the failings in the Innovation Fund? And did he actually review the fund when he became Treasurer? And if he did, what did he actually do? You mentioned different directions were brought in. Was it the Minister himself who brought them in, or were they brought in by others?
Sir, I and I think many others take responsibility for the Innovation Fund, all the way from the approval from this Assembly to set it up, and for ministers ultimately who are responsible to this Assembly for the performance of the departments for which they have responsibility. With regard to reviewing the Innovation Fund, it's not the role of the Treasury Minister to review the fund as such. There are other mechanisms in place, checks and balances, which are most appropriate in order to make sure that the fund, or any fund for that matter, is being managed, was implemented first of all, in line with the guidelines put down by the States Assembly when it's approved, and ministers with regard to their policy contained within it. And I can only say to the Deputy, sir, that as far as I am concerned, we have to make absolutely certain in the future that those responsible for such funds fulfill their obligations as we would expect.
We come to question 7, which Deputy Tadier will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister accept the findings of the Controller and Auditor General in R3 2017 regarding the Jersey Innovation Fund, that provisions relating to the use of royalties were not implemented and that other risk mitigation measures that she identified were not included? And will he accept political responsibility for the weaknesses in risk management which have been identified, and explain what action, if any, he will take to address them?
Thank you, sir. I was naturally very disappointed to read the findings of the Controller and Auditor General concerning risk mitigation. The fund's operating terms of reference were clear in that it was the role of the board to recommend that royalty agreements be sought. This was a point that was raised in the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel's report on the fund in March 2013. In response, the executive recognised the panel's concerns and undertook to draft templates that could be used for royalty agreements. Regrettably, neither activity occurred. It was also within the board's remit to recommend that funds be advanced in tranches and that personal guarantees be sought. As the Controller and Auditor General's report notes, this was considered in some cases but not applied consistently. As a consequence of the identification of these and other failings, I have directed that 2 internal investigations be undertaken, one to look at the actions of the ministers involved and another to examine the role of all officers connected to the fund.
So we hear the Chief Minister, like other ministers and assistant ministers, talk about disappointment, and normally one is disappointed when something happens that you don't expect. It comes as a surprise. So the question has to be asked is, why did the Chief Minister or the Assistant Minister and others involved in the political oversight of this fund not know what was going on under their very noses? Where was the political oversight? And if it wasn't there, why wasn't it being done properly?
Sir, let us go to the report and look at the evidence that the Controller and Auditor General presented. I know it's attractive, sir, to scapegoat individuals and to always want to do that. But the appropriate response to the report and the failings that the report highlights is to undertake the pieces of work that I have just outlined, together with, as I shall outline in a statement later in this sitting, together with the work that an accountant will perform, giving confidence around the issues that the Deputy of St John rightly raised to the Treasury Minister. It is right that those questions that the Deputy asks are answered by suitably independent persons, reviews without fear or favour, so that action can be taken once those reviews have been undertaken. Together, of course, sir, with the work that the Deputy Bree might undertake with his scrutiny panel and the work that Deputy Andrew Lewis will undertake as part of PAC.
Constable St John.
Thank you, sir. In view of the Controller and Auditor General's report, in which she said there were serious governance or failings in the governance, will the Chief Minister nail his colours to the mast and either dismiss the person responsible at a political level or stand by him and eventually fall with him? Thank you, sir.
So members will have seen a statement on their desk. That statement will be delivered shortly. And so maybe the Conitob would then like to ask me the question after that statement.
Deputy Lafondre.
Thank you, sir. Last Friday, Senator Joseph stated on television, I was asked to take responsibility to sort out the issues to do with the Innovation Fund, and that's what I have done. Could the Chief Minister confirm that when given the delegated responsibility for the fund, that the Chief Minister and the Senator were already aware that there were issues of governance surrounding the fund, namely back in November or December of 2014?
Yeah.
So the Chief Minister's Department became responsible for the fund in January 2016. One of the first things that happened in January 2016 was an internal audit of the working of the fund. And throughout that period, concerns that that report highlighted have been and continue to be addressed. So members should read the full report before jumping to conclusions, and conclusions should not be jumped to until the further work has been undertaken.
Point of order, sir. The question actually said about taking responsibility. The CNAG's report specifically states that delegated responsibility was given to Assistant Chief Minister Centros, who was assigned responsibility for innovation, and the date they have was the 6th of November 2014. It is not about which department it was in, it was which individual had that responsibility and from day one.
So that says for innovation, not the Innovation Fund. This Assembly, it is quite, you see, this is exactly the point, sir. One has to read the detail of the report and the other pieces of work to answer exactly the question which I think the Deputy is trying to drive at. Who was responsible during which period for the fund, not just for the political idea of innovation? And they are different things. And the further work needs to be undertaken so that I can be satisfied, so that this Assembly can be satisfied, and so that the public can be satisfied about where the responsibilities lay before the election, after the election, and once this Assembly has changed the law to deliver the responsibility not only for innovation but the Innovation Fund to the Chief Minister's department.
Thank you, sir. Just to bring the Minister back to the answer to the question about the royalties, doesn't the Minister agree in the law, whether there was a template or not under the Jersey Innovation Fund, the law in the finance law needed to be changed, and it was due to be changed within 6 months of the Innovation Fund being started. So who takes responsibility for this? It didn't happen. It couldn't happen. Royalties couldn't happen under the law. Nobody brought it back to this House within the 6 months or the 18 months after that. Who is responsible, sir? I asked the Chief Minister.
So it would appear from reading the report that the officials should have brought it forward, that they were requested to do so and it didn't happen, and that the board had it within their remit to propose that it was brought forward. But sir, I fully understand the frustration that members of this Assembly are ventilating this morning about who is responsible for what and when. And that, sir, is why I have instructed, are in the process of finally instructing today or tomorrow, with the law officers and senior independent QC to be able to answer some of the questions that members of this Assembly, that I have, and that the public have, sir.
Supplementary, sir. The Minister...
I'm sorry, Deputy. Okay. We've got so many members wanting to ask questions. Deputy Labby.
I'm interested to hear that from the Chief Minister, because this House is not going to have any faith in his administration carrying out the investigation into its own failings. And similarly with the Chief Executive. I mean, you know, the ink isn't even dry on the golfing duo whitewash. The Chief Executive should not be investigating the failings in his own civil service.
What is the question? I think the question is in relation to the Chief Executive.
Yeah, I gathered that, sir. Thank you. The reality is that both of those investigations, the one into political responsibility, what the relationship was between the minister or assistant minister and the official, will be undertaken, will be instructed independently, and the piece of work looking at disciplinary processes will also likewise be undertaken by an independent person from the United Kingdom, as I believe is appropriate, and I believe that this Assembly would think is appropriate.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
So the Chief Minister will be aware that one of the objectives of the fund was to increase its value, to actually top it up so that it can be reused and recycled. How could that possibly have happened if there was no change in the law to allow equity stakes to be taken? This was a guiding principle of the fund. That was one of the objectives as laid out in 124. So how could that possibly happen without that change in the law? So why wasn't that change in the law hurried through so we could have an effective fund rather than just a pot of money that was just dished out when requested? It was supposed to be a fund, it was supposed to be administered a fund, it appears not to have been. Can the Chief Minister explain why?
So I understand the frustration. I feel the frustration of not today being able to give satisfactory answers to some of the questions that I myself have, that members of this Assembly rightly have, and that members of the public have as well. Royalty agreements are part of a risk mitigation process that it was intended that the fund would have in place. But there were other risk mitigation processes that the fund did have in place, but they were not used. For example, expecting equity to be put in by existing shareholders or directors, expecting monies to be only paid in tranches rather than in lump sum amounts, and to have appropriate ongoing monitoring, and to think about whether there should have been payment holidays or not. So there were risk mitigation processes in place, but what this report says is that they were not used consistently, and there weren't appropriate processes in place to ensure that they were.
Supplementary, sir?
Deputy Sutton.
Yes, sir. The Chief Minister has just drawn a fine distinction on actions on the 6th of November 2014 between giving responsibility for innovation and being given responsibility for the Innovation Fund. Could he turn himself to consider the actions only 2 months later, 12th of Jan 2015, as noted in the Controller and Auditor General's report? The board was advised that Assistant Chief Minister with the responsibility for innovation would have delegated responsibility from the Minister of Economic Development to approve loans from the fund. Is it not clear that as early as the start of 2015, the Assistant Minister had responsibility for approving loans from this fund? Not 2016, as he now pretends.
So if the Deputy reads further down that timeline, he will also see another date in June 2016, where June 2015, where it is reported that formal delegation to approve the loans was actually issued. This is why, sir, the other pieces of work need to take place. Members of this Assembly, sir, I expect rightly have questions, but equally they are rightly responsible and want to have the evidence presented before them, which has been independently gathered based on the report of the Controller and Auditor General, in order that their questions can be satisfactorily answered.
Senator Ferguson.
I thought it would be interesting, since the board was in an advisory capacity and the decisions were being made by the minister, I thought that I would look up the ministerial decisions. Now, the only ministerial decisions listed are those relating to the Innovation Fund, were those by Senator Ossoff, and there is no record of the detailed decisions regarding giving of the loans. When will those be available on the ministerial decisions site?
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I shall certainly go and find out. But the important point about the details of that members have been asking me this morning and feeling frustrated about is who was responsible for what, whether it was innovation, whether it was the Innovation Fund politically responsible, and whether there's a separation between that political responsibility and the legal responsibility of signing off loans on the Innovation Fund. All of this information will be provided to Deputy Bree and his scrutiny panel, together with a whole plethora of emails, together this information will be provided to PAC, sir, because there are questions which need to be answered in relation to all of these details. Ministers have got nothing to hide. They are prepared and want to provide all of this information about where they were engaged, where responsibility lay, who signed what decision, what information they had to base that decision upon, what they were told before they made that decision, the inquiries they made before they made that decision. So, well, so I'm not sure that every member has. These questions will be answered during the course of these further works that need to be rightly undertaken.
Deputy St John, then a final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister not accept that in a statement made by his Assistant Minister on the 14th of June, he stated that he had delegated responsibility for the fund as an Assistant Minister for Economic Development before the 1st of January last year, and that he would take responsibility and accountability for all ministerial decisions, past, future and present, that are associated with the Innovation Fund? Is that clearer for the Chief Minister?
So that is recorded in Hansard. And as the Assistant Minister said, that was with regard to the ministerial decisions that were taken. But the Deputy Bree and his scrutiny panel, together with PAC, are going to have all the information upon which those decisions were based and the evidence and advice that they were provided with prior to making those decisions, so that members of the Assembly can understand the basis of those decisions, together with the other pieces of work that I've instructed as well.
Final supplementary, Deputy Teddy.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister accept that actually we can look at the many failures that are pointed to in the report, such as the royalties not being used as a mechanism and other risk mitigation measures not being implemented, but these are all actually symptomatic of what the Controller and Auditor General identifies as a cultural deficiency? On page 28, she talks about there was a culture where good governance was not central to decision making, either at the establishment of the fund or subsequently. And the question has to remain, when we talk about the Assistant Minister or somebody else saying, I am accountable, and what does that mean in real terms? Does the Chief Minister take political responsibility for the failures in this fund? So we are about to hear a statement, I think, where the Assistant Minister will tender offer to resign, and it will be pure window dressing, and the Chief Minister will say, I couldn't possibly accept your resignation.
Sir, may I ask a point of order, sir? A matter is, a statement is before members designed to be enabling me to answer questions. I understand that's already been tweeted. So there is an unpacking of a conclusion, answering questions properly, and the Deputy, I think, is showing a discourtesy to this Assembly and to you, sir, and the rest of us in actually not allowing proper parliamentary process to undertake. It may not be a ruling required, sir, but perhaps you could give some guidance.
I think, Senator, it's a matter that the Privileges and Procedures Committee may well wish to consider as to whether or not standing orders should be varied or guidance given to members. But certainly it is true that until a statement has been made, it has not been made, and the fact that it is circulated is not something that, in my view, ought to be taken advantage of. But at the end of the day, I think one must be realistic. Once it's been circulated, that risk is there.
The Chief Minister referred to it in a response to my question, so it did.
Yes.
So the point I'm making is,
question,
the point I was making, so the question will be come to, is that in most jurisdictions, in most parliaments, when something of this magnitude has happened, a resignation is virtually automatic, and we don't have these shenanigans by saying, where I'm politically accountable, I take responsibility, actually taking no responsibility whatsoever. Will action be taken by the Chief Minister to either tender his resignation as Chief Minister or to ask for the resignation of the Assistant Minister with political responsibility for the fund?
Chief Minister.
So action will be taken, and when this independent review, undertaken by an independent QC, concludes their report, if it says that action needs to be taken, it will be taken. If that review says that I should consider my position, I will do so, sir. We serve at the pleasure of this Assembly. We consider it an honour to serve the island that we love. We put the best interests of the island always to the fore, sir. We don't cling on. We do what we think is best for Jersey. And in this instance, that report will say where responsibility lies on balance, and action will be taken in light of that report. And if that report, sir, points the finger at me, so be it, sir. I will take the necessary action.
We come to question 8, which the Constable of St John will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister confirm whether or not negotiations for the 2015 Public Sector Pay Award have been concluded?
Chief Minister.
So I wonder if the Deputy Chief Minister could answer this question for me, please.
Thanks, sir. So the employer is pursuing a 2-year agreement, as the Constable referred to, 2015-2016. The pay review has not been concluded.
Supplementary, sir. Why has it not been concluded, and can we have a timescale as to when it will be concluded?
It has not been concluded at the present time because we have not got agreement with all parties. We have agreement with some groups, but not with others, sir. It's impossible to put a timeline on. What I will say is that an offer was made on the 29th of April 15, 22nd of January 16, and the 15th of 4th 16, sir. And the offer takes up, sir, the full amount allocated to the pay award in the medium-term financial plan for those years.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Were promises not made prior to the election in 2014 about the 2015 pay award, and why were those promises not kept?
I'm not aware of any promises that were made prior to the election. Pay negotiations are always very difficult, and it's not appropriate that they try and attempt to take place in this Assembly. Pay negotiations take place between the representatives and our professional staff who know what they're doing, sir, and I'm not going to get into pay negotiations here.
No, supplementary, sir. Why, on at least one occasion, did the SEB send the employee relations representatives to meet with the union representatives without giving them a clear mandate to negotiate?
Sir, the SEB have set a clear mandate in discussion with officers all the way along. I'm sorry if the Senator has a different view, but that's a fact, sir.
Deputy Southern.
Yes, sir. How many negotiating meetings have there been in the last 3 months over this issue? And at those meetings, does any representative, any elected representative, ever turn up?
The State's Employment Board have professional officers to negotiate pay agreements. I don't know offhand the number of meetings that have taken place, but they regularly take place, sir. And it's not appropriate for elected members to start to try and intervene in professional pay negotiations.
Final supplementary. Final supplementary.
Sir, we do not wish to interfere with pay negotiations. What I wish to ensure is that the public sector are paid the wages due to them, in some cases up to 2 years out of date. When are we going to get a result that we can stand up and say we're looking after our employees?
At least I agree on this point with the Constable. The sooner this is concluded, the better. But it has to be concluded appropriately, sir. And whilst I can't answer when, I hope that we will be able to conclude it fairly soon.
Come to question 9, which Deputy Mezek will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Following the presentation of R3 2017 in respect to the Jersey Innovation Fund, will the Chief Minister explain whether or not he was aware of the circumstances described in the 3rd to 6th bullet points of paragraph 2.8 of that report, where arrangements were only partially complied with or where the requirements were contested by key players, and what action, if any, will he take as a result?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. So there is a requirement to be very clear about what happened when, which I have asked myself for the Chief Minister to undertake a review, which he has agreed to do so. That is in everybody and in my interest for the truth to come out. So I became aware of issues in relation to the Innovation Fund in a partial and bitty way right the way through 2015. I was not aware of the matters highlighted in the section referred to in paragraph 2.8 of the CNAG's report. It is a matter of principle that any board constituted to administer public funds must operate to the highest standards. For board members to participate in discussions where they have financial interests, as outlined in the report, is unacceptable and is a very regrettable mark of the failure of the governance of this board, and was not envisaged as set out in the terms of reference and the Nolan principles, which are clearly set out in the actual report. The allocation of staff with requisite levels of experience is, of course, not a matter for politicians, only advisory. It is a matter for the accounting officer and their respective departments. What I can say to the Deputy and to the Assembly, sir, is that I made my views absolutely crystal clear in relation to what I thought of the staff and the level and requisite skills, and I finally made a decision, an unprecedented decision, to ask for the accounting officer, for his own best interests, to stand aside and to ask the Chief Executive of the State to take over accounting responsibilities, because my express requests were not being listened to and not being implemented.
Supplementary.
Sir, for the 3rd bullet point in those lists, the one that Senator Rose referred to about members of the board with direct financial interests in the borrowers not recusing themselves from those discussions, could the Assistant Minister be absolutely crystal clear? When was the first time he got an inkling that this was something that was happening? Was it at the time that the CNAG report came out, or did he know about this previous to that? And if so, when was it?
I did not know that, for the best of my knowledge and belief, and I am putting at the PAC and to the reviewers full disposition all my emails and everything that I have in relation to the request that I asked. But I did not know that. And the issue that I have is that there was repeated requests by me to get facts and to get information. I had apparently been delegated the issue of innovation, but I did not have the necessary requisite delegation to sign loans until the middle of 2015. I then did not have other information, despite repeated requests, and I mean repeated requests. Members will know that I am not a shrinking violet. I am in the department in which I am responsible. In fact, it wasn't even in a department I was responsible for, because part of them were actually in another building. It was not an acceptable state of affairs. I agree with the Deputy, shaking his head. An unacceptable state of affairs that a minister is not given the full information. When did I know about it? I did not know at all that there was effectively at all, as far as to the best of my knowledge and belief, that there was this unacceptable situation with... Sir, he keeps on asking me when. I didn't know. End of story. I am shocked and I'm angry, and this is unacceptable waste of public money.
Thank you, sir. The Assistant Minister's just said that he didn't know about particular loans, or he received information in part from the middle of 2015, who then signed off the application from applicant E, which started in 26th of March and was drawn down on 9th of June, or applicant B, 1st of June, second application, drawdown in December 2015, or applicant F, who drew down in 31st of July 2015. Who signed off those particular loans?
So I don't think I can go into detail on everything, but the difficulty that all this will come out, everything. But you can't.
Yeah, when you're being asked a question, how you deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's numerous questions and there's numerous bits of information.
No, you were asked 3 particular questions in relation to 3 particular
loans. And I have that information. That information can be published immediately. There was absolute clarity that my colleague, the former Economic Development Minister, was responsible for loans up until the end of his term of office, being advised by his accounting officer. There was a rather strange situation whereby I was given the responsibilities of innovation, but the actual delegation was not signed for me to sign loans. And so there's a question of, there's all sorts of questions that arise in relation to this. And the Minister for Economic Development, sometimes with my awareness, sometimes I don't think I was aware, I'm not criticising him either, there is a fundamental issue of who and accountability and actually knowing who is in charge. You can't have 2 bosses. I know how to be an assistant minister and I know how to be a minister. But what I do know is that the transfers of functions, which actually were designed to give me the ability to be able to do the things, was actually not carried out by this Assembly for 12 months. An impossible position, not only this portfolio, but all the others. Where were the staff to report to? Who were their bosses? They didn't know. And actually, this is why we've had the chaos. And members need to think themselves about some of their own roles in actually delaying matters which perhaps would have been better dealt with earlier, so that there could be clarity for what this Assembly actually appointed ministers to do, and I clearly wasn't able to do. But I still am responsible, and I'll still be accountable, just as I always have, sir.
Yes, sir. I think, hopefully, very simple question. Did the Assistant Minister, when he was Assistant Minister for Economic Development, sign or recommend for signing any decisions relating to the approval of loans prior to the date of the 1st of June 2015?
Well, the first thing is I should have had responsibility from the start, clearly. That's the first thing that is inexplicable. The second thing is that, yes, I did sign some loans upon advice, upon proper advice from a board with an advocate, with an accounting officer who I required to put an indication, an initial, something which I have done to ensure that ministers act upon advice, sir. They do not simply dream up ministerial decisions. They're presented with documentation, and documentation which complies with the policy. There's a debate to be had, sir, not today, about roles of accounting responsibility and ministers. And there needs to be clarity about this, because frankly, at the moment, there is like some sort of Salem witch hunt going on, where sorcery is being, and judge, jury, and executioner is always being put out on social media. And I regret that, sir. I hope that actually the facts and the truth can be found out, and that's why I'm taking the actions that I am.
Can I inform members that I have 5 members wanting to ask questions here. There are no doubt other members who want to ask questions later on in this session. And if we're to have any chance at all of making progress with a number of other questions, frankly, I have to cut this short. Deputy Tadier, final supplementary.
It's not my question, sir.
I'm sorry. Beg your pardon. Then you're lucky you are next.
All right, thank you.
Deputy Taddy, and then will be the final supplementary.
Honesty is the best policy, I think. Does the Assistant Minister stands up with vigorous indignation about the failure of the fund, as if he's a casual observer, a third party, but he is actually the Assistant Minister with delegated responsibility for that fund. He can't shout at the TV when his football team is not doing well, when he's one of the players in that. Does the Assistant Minister agree that an apposite quote for this moment is that success has many fathers, failure is an orphan? And actually, if the fund has been very successful and set up to achieve what it achieved to do, the Council of Ministers and him would be saying, haven't we done a great job? We knew this was the right thing to do, and it was a great success for us. Similarly, when it fails, somebody needs to take responsibility. Presumably, it's the captain, it's the manager of the team that when the team doesn't succeed as planned. Resignation is surely in order.
So, the analogy for football analogy is an interesting one because I wasn't a player on the pitch. I was sitting on the sidelines. I was trying to find out exactly what was going on. I am angry, dissatisfied, dismayed at what has happened. We've been let down. I feel let down. And I have to take responsibility for this assembly being let down and the public. And the public are rightly angry. There has been mismanagement, maladministration, a failure of governance. I promised the Chief Minister that I would get to the bottom of it. And I have tried. And I can say to members that I've taken action which largely already has implemented, without the CNAG's report, actually, or most of the actions. The fund was mothballed. I've signed one loan, one additional loan, not a new loan, in 2016, when I actually, and even then when I was given the responsibilities, I can say to the Assembly that my accounting officer in my own department refused to take the fund because it was a shambles. Now, I don't mind being held accountable, and I am going to be making a statement which has already been tweeted by Reform Jersey. I regret that. I wanted to actually answer questions properly and then, in proper sequence, make this Assembly, which is the supreme Parliament of Jersey, aware of my decisions. I accept in full the CNAG's report. I have tried my best, sir, and I will be judged onto account. Innovation is going well, sir, by the way. That's why we have record employment and fantastic growth in many areas. It is not just about the fund, and it is not only the fund that I've been working on, but I wasn't able to work on the fund. I've been doing other things.
One supplementary.
Thank you, sir. My first supplementary to this was an incredibly clear question, but Senator Rosev chose to give a very ambiguous answer. So I'm asking for a very clear answer to this. I don't know why I'm bothering when he's not even facing to listen. Yes, thank you very much. The question is, the third bullet point talks about private sector members declaring financial interests and not recusing themselves from the work of the board. He has said he didn't know about this. I want to know when he became aware of this. I became aware as a casual observer at 11:30 on Wednesday morning last week when I read the report. When did he become aware? Was it when he read this report, or did he know beforehand? And if he did know beforehand, when? Days, weeks, months, years, what was it?
So there's going to be a full timeline of everything about it, because there's a lot of detail, sir. I know I didn't know. I have been Treasury Minister of this Assembly, at this Assembly's pleasure, on governance. I'm an internal auditor. I've been a fraud investigator. What, sir, do members think that I think of somebody not declaring an interest? It's an absolute disgrace, and I will not stand for it, and I will not stand for other people doing it. I will publish a full timeline, but I want that independently done. So the Deputy still gesticulates, sir. I've been absolutely clear. I would never tolerate such a matter, to the best of my knowledge and belief, and that's all I have to say at the moment on this issue. A full timeline, sir. I have no further comments to make. I would never, ever allow such a thing to happen if I knew about it. I didn't even see... Sir, I'm being asked when. Sir, there is a whole detailed set of issues. Is the Deputy not actually, and sir, is this Assembly not now aware that I was not told things, that I was actually excluded from decisions, what I was supposed to be doing? There's no huffing, sir. That's the facts. And I stand here saying the truth to this Assembly, which is the Parliament of Jersey.
We come to question 10, which Deputy Martin will ask of the Minister for Housing.
Yes, thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what, if any, policy decisions she had made in order to ensure that there is sufficient stock of housing with more than 3 bedrooms to meet the current needs of islanders? And has she communicated this to Andium Homes in order that they desist from selling its stock of housing with more than 3 bedrooms? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm focusing on the delivery of 1,000 new homes by 2020 to meet the demand for affordable housing, be that for rental or for purchase. The Housing Gateway provides evidence of the demand for affordable housing, including the need for any large family homes. Andium and the trusts use this evidence to manage their current housing stock and to plan future developments. It's also important to note that supply reflects demand, and the largest current demand is for 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes. Yes, sir?
Supplementary, sir. So do I take that from the Housing Minister to be a no? The Housing Minister is not discussing the shortage of anything over 3 bedrooms and quite happy that the Andiums keep on selling their stock. I just need a clear answer, sir. Thank you.
So it is down in the housing strategy. The evidence is there. It's through the gateway, sir, and it goes through to the housing trust with a business plan. But sir, it's unrefutable that the most demand is for 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes. If there is a demand for 4 bedroom homes, sir, some have been built, but also important, sir, to use the existing stock, better use of the existing stock.
Minister, I think you're being asked whether you've communicated with Andium Homes to ask it not to sell its stock of housing with more than 3 bedrooms. And that's a straightforward answer, isn't it?
Sorry, sir. Yeah, they have only sold 4 bedroom properties since 2014. 3 were sold of those were sold on the open market because the properties were not suitable for social renting, be that location, layout or parking. And the fourth property, sir, was deferred payment scheme, but it released a house elsewhere. So yes, I have many discussions with Andium, as I do with the other social housing trusts.
Sir, is it not the case that 4 sales of such housing is actually a poor decision? It's 4 too many. Why is the Minister continuing to sell off housing through Andium?
So part of that is affordable to buy, sir. And some of the houses under 3 bedrooms, either 1, 2 or 3 bedrooms, can be sold under deferred payment. That is very clear in the housing strategy, sir, as well as in Andium business plan. So there's not many people waiting for 4 bedroomed home. I know the incident that Deputy Martin is talking about, and we're trying very, very hard. But the most important thing is to use existing housing stock to encourage people who are in 4 bedrooms who don't perhaps need them to downsize.
So surely the prime purpose of Andium is as a social rented housing provider. It is not to provide, although it's quite a laudable aspiration to promote affordable purchase housing, that's not the philosophy and the ethos that was envisaged for Andium. Indeed, it wasn't the case for the old housing department before it was Andium. So does the Minister accept that actually when we've got a waiting list problem in all areas for all categories of housing, that we shouldn't be selling off properties? If anything, we should be buying them and buying more than we sell, and we should be selling 0.
So very, very few homes are being sold. I understand from Andium it's 11. But you raise a very good point, sir. We need supply. I keep thumping on, sir. It's supply, supply, supply. We know that there's a waiting list on the gateway, and mostly for 1, 2 or 3 bedroomed homes. So be able to, those who aren't 4 bedroom, because have got somewhere to downsize too, sir. And there is a plan to put 1,000 new affordable homes by 2020.
Final supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's disappointing to hear that the Minister is ploughing on to sell these houses, they are short of 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, very short, and to compare them to 1, 2 and 3 is wrong. The Minister talks, my final supplementary talks about we are going to supply X amount by 2020. Will she not then look into and speak to Andium about stopping the selling of the larger homes until they have the supply to meet the demand, and people are sitting there with more than 4, 5, 6 children in unsuitable accommodation for maybe a year or 2 because they are selling to the people who don't even they haven't got the need. They might have 1 child and they're allowed to buy a 4-bedroom house. It's not what Andium was set up for. It's not what social housing is. Will the Minister agree to start talking about this. Thank you, sir.
So I've had many discussions with Angium, but the basic fact is that there's mostly a demand for 1, 2 and 3 bedroomed houses. There is that demand. I can give the deputies who's waiting on the gateway. There's 140, I think, people waiting in band 1 for 1 and 2 bedroomed houses. That's where the greatest need is. And if we can, by building 1, 2 bedrooms, release some of the 4-bedroomed homes to downsize, surely, sir, that is the biggest priority, because people who don't need 4-bedroomed houses should be able to be able to downsize.
Come to question 11, which Deputy Kevin Lewis will ask of the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture.
Thank you, sir. Further to reports that children have gained access to the old cable car station at Fort Regent, will the Minister undertake to tighten up security at the fort to avoid a fatality?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. My department views safety issues at Fort Regent as one of its key risks and is urgently taking measures to safeguard the public. Prior to Christmas, officers from the department met with the Council of Ministers to discuss the removal of both the cable car station and the footbridge between the fort and the swimming pool. Council of Ministers' approval was given, and officers are now working with the Treasury to identify the funds for the work. Until demolition is possible, sir, which is hoped to be by the end of this year at the latest, my department will continue to work with Property Holdings to seek security and safety at both sites is maintained.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps I should also be working with his officers on this. After lodging this question regarding Fort Regent, sir, last Saturday, I took my dog for a walk up the Glasses Field to see what the problem was. And walking down the path again, looked behind me as I was passed by a group of youths who walked through a gap in the fence and proceeded to climb on top of the pool building, completely unobstructed. Surely better fencing and CCTV cameras should be installed as a minimum. Does the Minister not agree, sir?
Well, sir, we are working with Property Holdings, and the department continues to make strong, regular efforts to fence off and secure both cable car stations and the footbridge and all other areas where safety is deemed important, sir. But it is difficult because these young people have very ingenious ways of getting in. As one hole is repaired in the fence, another hole appears, sir. But nevertheless, the department and my department are doing their best to keep on top of it. Because I'm surprised there hasn't been a serious injury or worse already, because these young people are behaving in a very unsafe safe manner. They're skating on the roof of the footbridge and other areas, and it's very dangerous. And I would urge them to stop for in the interest of their own safety. But the Deputy can rest assured that we're doing everything possible to keep up with the security, sir, until the final measures have been taken.
There'll be opportunity for questioning this Minister in questions without notice later. Final supplementary, Deputy Lewis.
What?
Final supplementary, Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I'd be more than happy to send the Minister pictures of a 3-foot gap between a fence and a wall that children don't have to be cunning, they merely walk in. Videos have also appeared online showing youngsters running across the roof of the dome of Fort Regent. If anybody runs across the glass section north or south of Fort Regent, they will go through, and there is a considerable drop. Will the Minister also agree to secure the old cable car station, sir? Thank you.
Yes, I'd be grateful if the Deputy could forward a picture of the gaps. I can pass it on to officers and they can take action. I would also be pleased to arrange for the Deputy and any other members interested to visit the fort and be shown around by the staff. And I think they will be astounded to see that young people are scaling buildings that I think Spider-Man would have trouble getting up. So it really is quite incredible what they're achieving. But I do assure members that the department is doing its best to keep it secure.
Come to question 12, which Deputy Higgins will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise how ministers hold civil servants to account for their actions, and state what action, if any, he will take to enhance the means by which ministers perform this function?
Thank you, sir. Our legislation places an obligation on chief officers to implement the decisions of their minister and to follow policy directions. In turn, ministers are accountable to this Assembly for the actions of their department. However, we have a non-political civil service in Jersey, which means that it is not ministers who assess the performance of officers, but rather their line managers. In addition, the Public Finances Law places a clear obligation on accounting officers to be personally accountable for the use of public monies, a practice which ensures that clear responsibility always exists for spending. Within this system, if a minister is unhappy with the performance of their chief officer, they can raise the matter with the chief minister and the chief executive, and a range of other safeguards exist, including review and appraisal systems, the recruitment of appropriately qualified professionals, internal audit function, and ultimately the Controller and Auditor General, Public Accounts Committee, and this Assembly.
Supplementary.
Can the Chief Minister tell us then which or when the last time a civil servant was his employment was terminated because of failures that he's actually done in office, and more particularly, which civil servants have gone without a payoff before the end?
So we don't normally talk about individual members of staff, but members of staff are leaving the employment of the states all the time. Some of those are leaving of their own accord, and some of them are leaving as a result of disciplinary measures.
Does the Chief Minister think that the present existing legislation is fit for purpose, or does it somewhat neuter ministers in holding civil servants to account?
So one of the issues that this Controller and Auditor General's report has highlighted is perhaps a deficiency in the system about when roles, responsibilities, political oversights, legal responsibility moves to ministers, moves across departments, the role of this Assembly in scrutinising that, the length of time it takes to move those functions, and we see that there was confusion in this particular case about who was politically responsible, who was legally responsible, who had the legal responsibility to sign which loan when, and the division between the minister's responsibility and the accounting officer's responsibility, the chief executive's responsibility, and the board's responsibility. And I am absolutely committed to ensuring that in light of this report, all of those areas are simplified and clarified so that people can rightly be held to account for their actions.
Final supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. One of the things that's been noticeable is that every time a member raises concerns or criticisms of civil servants, the ministers back them to the hilt, and that the person who's bringing the complaint is wrong. When it comes to a minister suddenly on the rack because of actions within his department, it's always the civil servant's fault. When are we actually going to finally deal with the situation of ministers are responsible for policy and civil servants are responsible for operations? There is not such a clean, definitive line between the two, and ministers should accept responsibility for the actions that are going on under their nose. Otherwise, they're not doing their job. Does the minister not agree?
So ministers act upon the advice that they are provided and the evidence that's provided with the advice, but so I'm little confused about what the deputies actually say, because as he rightly said then in his question, or the preamble to his question, that ministers are responsible for policy and should be held to account for that policy, and officers are responsible for the implementation of that policy and should be held to account for the implementation of that policy and held to account for the spending of taxpayers' money. But there is, I think the Deputy raises a point, there is currently a lack of clarity in that regard, and even members of this Assembly today have asked questions which have crossed that boundary. It has got to be sorted out. It will require legislative change, and I am absolutely committed to bringing forward those changes to that Assembly. When I stand in this assembly, when the next Chief Minister issues letters of instructions to ministers and assistant ministers, this assembly should know that that responsibility has moved on that letter of instruction, and not have the confusion that has arisen because when did it move, didn't it move, was the right decision made? That's got to be clarified so that people, whether it's the political or it's the staff, can be rightly held account for what they are responsible for.
Come to question 13, which Senator Ferguson will ask of the Minister for the Environment.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister implement an independent review of the planning and building policies which are currently applied to historic buildings used for residential purposes, in other words, family houses, and if so, when?
Thank you, sir. Sir, the planning policies for the management of change in historic buildings are set out in the Island Plan, which was approved by this Assembly. They are applied consistently to all heritage assets, including private homes that are of a special architectural or historic interest. The process of developing and adopting these policies was the subject of extensive consultation, scrutiny and review, including that of an independent planning inspector. I do not currently plan to review the Island Plan again until the end of the current plan period, which is 2020.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Why does the department consider that they should decide into what era a family residence should be tied? And why should they prevent a family using modern material where applicable?
Sir, as I just stated, the planning policies applied by the department, my department, to managing change in historic assets are set out in the Island Plan. Approved by this Assembly also are our building bylaws, which are about energy conservation. And I accept the criticism. I acknowledge that there is a tension between the objectives of preserving historic buildings and those that would save our energy. All I can say is where there is a conflict, my officers in both the Historic Environment Department and the Building Control Department work as hard as they can to reach a compromise which is acceptable to both sides.
Sorry, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. The Minister said his officers follow a consistent approach, but that isn't the case. When it comes to plastic windows, the Ministers, the department have followed very strange policies. They prosecuted some people for putting plastic windows in the back of property, allowed others to put plastic windows in the front, we're talking about historic properties, and others in the back. The policy is totally inconsistent and seems to come down to what the historic buildings officer seems to want. Will the Minister look into this? Because I can give him plenty of examples where his policy is not, his department's policy is not consistent.
So I did say that I wasn't going to review the Island Plan before the end of this term, but members of the Assembly will be aware that I'm committed to reducing red tape, and I have already instigated quite a lot of work and changes to the permitted development order, which allows people to undertake work without permission from the department. I'm currently working on increasing the general development order in the area of historic and listed buildings, and members will be aware that in the first 6 months of this year I will be allowing people to do more work on listed buildings without permission, and I would engage any members, I would ask any members who wish to engage to speak to me about that. And I return to the Deputy's question, which is inconsistency, and I say to the Deputy, if he has examples which he claims, I would be glad to see them.
Final supplementary.
Given the article which I gave to the Minister earlier on about the work that's been done in Scotland, and they're always pretty ahead with things up there, will he actually look at that article and look at it in the light of using up-to-date materials and not tying properties, residential properties, into an era where when they were actually built? This business about windows is actually quite important because, you know, it's come to a choice between restoring your house or freezing to death. You know, you've got to do something about it, sir.
I will commit to reading the article that the Senator's given to me, sir, and I will respond to her.
We come to question 14, which Deputy Mezek will ask of the Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Following the presentation of R3 2017 by the Comptroller and Auditor General in relation to the Jersey Innovation Fund, will the Chief Minister confirm he accepts the validity of the criticism at paragraphs 3.3 and 3.4 of the report that essential information was not provided to the Assembly to inform its decision-making, and if so, will the Chief Minister accept personal responsibility for those shortcomings, and if not, why not?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. The original proposition set out under the manpower and resources section of the report said that the GIF was to run within executive with a support mechanism to the board. The amended proposition of P124, after the scrutiny panel had implemented their review, maintained the same level of support despite the fact that the scrutiny panel had raised issues in their report. It is, in hindsight, a matter of regret that the officials did not reconsider and amend what should have been the manpower and resource requirements for the executive in the light of the scrutiny panel recommendations, and then reflect this in the amended proposition. The failures of the board and officials to satisfy themselves that the CNAG speaks about of oversight was not satisfactory. The oversight was not satisfactory, and they did not identify and quantify at an early stage that required provision for doubtful debts is, I think, a further example that the CNAG rightly says, and the failures of the governments, which, of course, were issues, as I said earlier, which was not a surprise to me. These were the issues that led to my decisions in the autumn, finally, of 2016, where effectively I put in, I got stronger and stronger in terms of being actually saying, no, I'm not satisfied, and ultimately led me to ask for an accounting officer switch. I don't think that's ever happened before. I also gave advice that I was not satisfied with a recruitment process, and that was taken on board, even though much of my other recommendations and suggestions were not.
So the findings of the CNAG report make it very clear that the Innovation Fund was deficient right from its very foundations, and those foundations, of course, were laid at a time when Senator Joseph was the Treasury Minister. So the question is, does he take his share of the responsibility for that, or does he have another elaborate excuse to pin it somewhere else?
So I don't think I do have elaborate excuses. I stand before this Assembly and I serve with all ministers at the pleasure and with the confidence of this Assembly. And I put myself before this Assembly at all times, as I've done in 16 years, to be admonished or congratulated or otherwise. There was a difficult situation, which is going to be very clear, I hope, when people understand the reality of what I was faced with, and unclarity. And I look forward to the reviews. I have attempted to keep, as appropriate, the chairman of the Economic Scrutiny Panel, who's taken a very active and welcome role into my areas of responsibility. And it is really going to be for them, sir, to comment as to whether or not who did what when, from a scrutiny point of view, which I absolutely respect, and also for the Chief Minister's designated requirement to have an independent review. There are many issues which need to be dealt with, but this should not be a personal witch hunt or anything like that. It does feel a bit like that, if I may say.
Thank you, sir. The CNAG report clearly states that information on loan repayments was not provided to the politician responsible for the Jersey Innovation Fund. Given that the terms of P134/2012 clearly refer to reporting policies, including loan repayments, why did the Assistant Minister not identify those failings at an early stage? And had he not informed himself by reading the proposition which he originally produced and presented to this Assembly as Rapporteur and as Minister for TNR to identify the information that he was meant to be receiving?
So, Deputy Flavondre used to be an Assistant Minister of mine. I think he knows quite well what I'm like. I read things, I ask questions, I'm tenacious. I never stop. I never stop asking questions. I've never stopped since I was, never that behaviour is irritating to some people, but I never stop asking questions. But clearly, as the facts will show, I was not given the information. And despite asking, I was not given the information on which to be able to advise the then Minister of Economic Development and then the Chief Minister, who were an Assistant Minister, acts in the name of a Minister. I know what my job is. I knew my job as Treasury Minister was, and that was to take Economic Development's report, get it scrutinised, make all the amendments and make changes, and then when you're a Minister, to check with a ministerial decision whether it complies with the terms of reference and sign it or otherwise. I know exactly what my job is, but I can only do my job if I'm unable to do so and given accurate information. And I can say to the Assembly, sir, I was not given accurate information or complete information. It was chaos throughout 2015.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
So there was identified in the CNAG's report, there was a 6-month period whereby there was 3 minuted examples whereby non-compliance and concerns were expressed by the board. During that 6-month period, did the Assistant Minister not severely question the board and find out exactly what was going on? Was he seeing copies of the minutes? And if he was, why was he not asking? If he wasn't seeing them, he's saying he wasn't, he's nodding his head, then why wasn't he asking for those minutes to see exactly what was going on?
So apparently I have a reputation of speaking too much and asking too many questions. I don't think I'm any different in relation to the Innovation Fund. But if you ask and don't get, but when there comes a time, that there is a breaking point, you break. And that breaking point, I'd ask the Deputy to recall the difficult situation when this Assembly hadn't even decided on the movement of, I was supposed to be appointed for a month, I think, as an Assistant Economic Development Minister. I didn't have the Chief Officer under my own control. It was not concomitant. In other words, the Minister and the Chief Officer weren't together. I was an Assistant Minister in a department that wasn't in existence and a Chief Officer that wasn't mine. How can you do your job in those circumstances? Some members of this Assembly need to just ask themselves, sir, exactly what position ministers put that in. I'm not blaming anybody, but just the reality of it. And maybe there's some lessons learned to be in hindsight. You've got to be able to do the job. I wasn't able to do the job, but I still stand for counsel.
So the Minister hasn't asked the question.
Well, I would say that
what's
not in doubt, sir, is that the Assistant Chief Minister is scrupulously honest and extremely hard-working on behalf of this island. We just drill down into the log filler case, which sparked this all off. Did he sign off on the log filler loan? And, or if he didn't, who did? And at that time, who was officially politically responsible for the fund?
So I apologise to Deputy Lewis. I did not have the minutes. I didn't have the minutes. I asked for them lots of times. That's the problem. Or I was given partial information. It's been a nightmare, sir, but that'll come out. To Deputy Labby, thank you. I appreciate the Deputy's questions. I'm afraid I can't even remember exactly what. Could you just repeat it? I'm sorry.
The question was whether you signed off the log
Yes, I'm sorry.
loan.
Yes, sir.
If you didn't, who did?
So this is one of the nightmares that we've had, and I've gone back. The Economic Development Minister signed the log filler loan, and he did so after consulting me, but I did not have the legal power to do it. I thought I did, and I kept on asking questions. Was I given this? Have I not been given this? Because actually, standing orders, all this is in the public domain. The actual delegation of functions give me innovation. It was only when the Chief Minister signed his delegation.
So, point of order, surely that's a satisfactory answer, sir.
Sir, I was not given delegated responsibility to sign loans. That was one of the problems. There are many issues here, and that's why the Chief Minister's right to have a proper political inquiry.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I know I'm risking opening a can of worms by asking what I hope is a simple question, but could the Assistant Chief Minister just clarify in very clear terms what it is that he believes he has done wrong?
I want somebody else to judge that, sir. I want somebody else to judge that, because I don't want to be. I've faced numerous political controversies. It's tough taking on tough things. And I know that the Innovation Fund was tough. And so I'm not going to answer the question, sir, because it's for other people to do so. And it's right and proper. And I'll stand accountable for whatever a proper person says, but not a witch hunt, please. Let's have a proper investigation by proper people.
We come to question 15. Can I just say to members that question time is supposed to end at 12:49, which is 5 minutes' time. What I would propose, if members agree, is that we continue to finish questions with notice, then take the Assistant Chief Minister's statement, and then break for lunch. Very well. Then we come to question 15, which Deputy Taddy will ask of the Minister.
Thanks, sir. I apologise for the banality of this question, but I think it's important nonetheless. Are levels of pollution in the tunnel monitored, and if so, how often? When was the last testing done, and what were the results?
So, to my knowledge, it's 20 years since testing was done in the tunnel. At that time, the results were averaged as poor, but levels of pollution in the tunnel are not routinely monitored.
Thanks, sir. There used to be a sign on the tunnel that I could remember for pedestrians, which said, during peak times, the air quality in this tunnel is poor. That's no longer there. Does the Minister know when that was removed and why, and whether or not the air quality in the tunnel is still poor at peak times?
So I don't know when the sign was removed. I will certainly speak to the Minister for Infrastructure about getting it put back. Members may be aware that the tunnel was built as a traffic tunnel with access to, not necessarily for pedestrians, but more for work to be done. But nevertheless, people do use it and have used it in the past. I've got no reason to think that the quality of the air in the tunnel at busy times is any worse than it was 20 years ago. But certainly I'm aware that in other areas of the island at busy times, we do have some issues with air pollution. So I would say to the Deputy, to the best of my knowledge, I would think that when traffic is stationary in the tunnel, the quality of the air in there is probably still poor.
Final supplementary. Oh, I didn't see that, I'm sorry.
Yes, if I can ask the Minister, will he leave the Assembly today and ask his officers to check the quality in the tunnel so we get an up-to-date reading of it? And surely he would think that with the volume of traffic that's increased, that probably the pollution is probably even worse. Will he actually instruct his officers to do it and come back and report to the Assembly?
So when I said I thought it might be better, that's on the basis that technology these days allows people to drive vehicles with engines which emit far less than they used to, certainly 20 years ago. But what I would say to the Deputy is that in the past it's been difficult to get accurate information, certainly not real-time information, and any tests that we did in the past were averages, so that you may have an average of poor, but you would know during the course of the 24 hours that it was probably good during the middle of the night, and at times of high congestion it might have been worse than poor. But I would finish by saying this, now that environmental health is into my department, we are going to trial in the first 6 months of this year some real-time technology using buses and using the latest technology so we can actually allow the public to see what the quality of the air is like in any part of the island. And certainly I look forward to seeing that data on the internet, and hopefully if it can be developed in an app. And once the buses have this technology on, I think we will be able to see for ourselves in real time where we get issues, when we get issues, and certainly if there are issues in the tunnel.
Final supplementary.
Thanks, sir. It'll be interesting to see what the buses come back with, especially when they're near the coast. But going back to the tunnel, does the Minister accept that whilst cars may be more efficient, the excessive traffic that we have on our roads leads to more stationary vehicles more often, including in the tunnel, and that if this is causing a danger for people inhaling that at peak times, we need to know about that, and signs should be put back on the tunnel to let pedestrians know that the air quality is poor and potentially harmful for them.
I completely agree, sir. I hadn't realised that the signs had disappeared, and I know the Minister for Infrastructure is nodding. Between the two of us, we will assure the members and the public that those signs will be put back, and people shouldn't walk through the tunnel at times of high congestion and when traffic is stationary, especially if they have respiratory problems, and I would urge them to avoid it if they can.
That brings questions with notice to an end. The time for questions with notice to an end, so questions 16 and 17 drop off the list.
Can I ask for a written response to my question 17, sir, which has failed to meet the deadline today?
Well, Assistant Chief Minister, Deputy Southern has asked for a written response to his question 17. Chief Minister, in the light.
So may I test the chair and ask if it would be possible to extend question time to allow 16 and 17 to be asked? If I understood that was what the chair meant when he said we'll continue, and I wouldn't have asked my question if I'd have known. That's by the by.
Well, the provision is 2 hours according to standing orders, so one would have to lift the standing order, and I wouldn't have thought you really want to move that.
So I'd like to propose that we extend to finish the question time, perhaps allow 10 minutes to finish 16 and 17, to raise standing orders or by whichever mechanism the chair thinks is the best way to do that.
The problem is once you've lifted standing orders for this purpose, there's no control over what members can or can't ask. So standing orders don't apply.
So with respect, other parliaments do frequently lift standing orders for different reasons, and they manage to proceed by mutual agreement of what the course of action will be. So what I'd like to propose, sir, is that we continue for 10 minutes to finish 16 and 17, and if that's not the will of the Assembly, I'm happy with that as well.
Well, I think it's a matter for the Assembly. Would you, those members in favour of continuing for a further 10 minutes?
So will we then leave Senator Ozev's statement till after lunch?
I've already given indication Senator Ozev's statement will be given before lunch. So those members in favour of Deputy Taddy's proposition acknowledge that if it is to be adopted, there will be no control whatsoever from the chair about what questions can be asked, because standing orders won't apply. Those members in favour, kindly show. Those against? So we now come to the statement which the Assistant Chief Minister wishes to make. May I just say at the outset that although the closing statement says that he will be taking questions on the statement, it is for me a matter of principle. I regard this as a personal statement and not as a statement on a matter of official responsibility.
Sir, it's surely a matter of personal responsibility. The Minister is responsible for innovation. He's making a statement about innovation, surely.
Deputy, I regard the statement as a statement for passing away from official responsibility. So I don't think it is a question of official responsibility.
So could I support Deputy Southern's interjection? The Assistant Minister is, as we stand in the Assembly, I wonder if you could consider this before making a final ruling, stands in the Assembly with those delegated responsibilities until, as members will see from his statement, the action he intends to take later today, sir.
Sir, also, I'd like to stress how this is very much in the public interest and should be allowed to continue.
So if I may add, that the statement is actually headed up as a statement by the Assistant Chief Minister, not by Senator Ozup in a personal capacity.
That is true.
Sir, oh.
If I may just say to members, this statement, to my mind, indicates that he's going to offer to stand aside from his responsibilities. And in those circumstances, the question as to whether or not questions should be permitted of the person doing so is a matter of principle, because it's not just one that concerns Senator Ozef. It will concern any minister in the future. And it would be extremely undesirable to have resignation statements the subject of questions thereafter. The practice has always been, if there is to be a resignation statement, the statement is made and that is an end to it. It is, as I say, my reading of the statement is that's what it amounts to. And it is true that it is headed Assistant Chief Minister, but on the other hand, It was done in a great hurry. The GREF received it at 10:45 or something like that this morning. And I had to make a quick decision as to whether to allow it to be made today, which I have. But it is, to my mind, I'm afraid it is quite clear that it is a statement which is a personal statement.
Sir, could I actually was going to raise this, and I was of the opinion you are, sir, because if this Assistant Minister is resigning as Assistant Minister, it is a personal statement. The questions we have in this House, the words don't say he's resigning as Assistant Minister. He's saying he's offering to step aside from his responsibilities for the Innovation Fund. There's questions even on that one statement that we need to clarify, or he needs to go away and make sure we've got a proper personal statement that can be read out, and there's no question. Thank you, sir.
So can I make my statement? I sought guidance from a number of individuals about this. I am the Assistant Minister with responsibility for a number of different areas, and I have not tendered my resignation. I've discussed it with the Chief Minister, and I will be discussing afterwards from this morning. My intentions are clear to do what the Chief Minister wishes me to do, but I have not done that yet, and I wanted to be accountable to this Assembly, to the Parliament of Jersey, to answer questions. And that's what I think my obligations are, and that's what I thought the right thing was to do. So I ask you, if I may, to respect the fact that the Chief Minister and I have a discussion to have about how he is to deal with the consequences of this matter, and to make a statement and which I want to answer questions, because the members have them.
That is a matter then you must discuss with the Chief Minister over the luncheon break. Because as it currently stands, I am not prepared to take this as a statement on a matter of official responsibility. To my mind, as I read it as a statement for stepping aside, and that makes it a personal statement. Now, if that's not what you want to say, then perhaps you have that discussion with the Chief Minister over lunch.
So can I ask a point of order on a separate matter? We obviously have read this statement, many of us. We will go outside, we'll be asked by journalists whether we've got any comments. And in order to be proper and accountable to this Assembly, out of respect, how should we react to questions about the content of the statement?
Well, the answer is, although I understand it has been tweeted, it ought not to have been, because it has not been made. Members will just... The correct answer to journalists or to anybody else is that no statement has yet been made.
Sir, can I just ask you to consider your ruling? Whilst you are quite correct, no statement has yet been made. A section of that statement has been tweeted. We may wish it had not been tweeted. PPC may consider the appropriateness or not of those actions. It has been tweeted, an actual copy of a sentence in the statement. And therefore, sir, it seems as a matter of fairness that the Assistant Minister should be enabled to make his statement so that this Assembly continues to be respected and respected by those who have official responsibility, by those who serve at the pleasure of this Assembly. If that tweet had not taken place, we cannot, sir, act over the lunch adjournment as if something has not happened which has happened. I wonder, sir, if you could just consider whether it isn't appropriate that the Assistant Minister is allowed now, because of that, to give his statement of official responsibility, in which, sir, he explains to the Assembly the action that he is going to take later today. Had he already, sir, stepped aside from his responsibilities, I concur, sir, it would be a personal statement. But in this instance, from my view, sir, think it is he still has those official responsibilities.
Chief Minister, I do not think it is open to a minister to have it both ways. Either he is going or he's not going. And the statement, if he's going, is one of personal responsibility. If he is not going, then it's a matter of official responsibility, and I would have to have time to consider whether or not the statement should be made. But it has been circulated, and I have not approved it on other than the basis it is a statement of personal responsibility. Now, if the Assistant Chief Minister wants to give that statement now, he can do so. Otherwise, we will adjourn until after the luncheon break.
So I hear what you're saying. With respect, it places the Assistant Chief Minister in an extremely difficult position. He has arrived at this assembly this morning, sir, to be respectful of this assembly. And that is every minister, despite what some members think, hold this assembly in the highest regard. The questions and the debate that we've had this morning are absolutely right. Those are questions that should be asked and addressed by this assembly. So the Assistant Minister is being placed in the position where, through absolutely no fault of his own, he is being placed in a position where he will have to publish the entire statement. Therefore, that was not his intention to show respect, showing disrespect to this assembly, as others have done. And that was not his intention, sir. And I think it places him in an extremely difficult position when he came here today, sir, with the very, very best of motives.
So, can I seek some clarification here? I'm somewhat confused, I think other members are. Is the Assistant Minister intending to resign from the Executive, or is he intending to step aside from overseeing the Innovation Fund and matters of innovation and digital? That's what I'd like to understand. Which is it?
Can you answer that last question?
So, it has been said that I am responsible for quite a lot of things. There's a lot of work to be done, and I have to talk to the Chief Minister. This report is about innovation, and I have to talk to the Chief Minister about the modalities of how he is going to deal with, effectively, either a full stepping aside, in other words, a full resignation or otherwise. There are matters that must be dealt with, but I have not actually said that. I've said what I'm prepared to do for this, and I wish to be treated, if I may say, fairly and properly, which I have not been, I think, able to do until now. So the Chief Minister has delegated to me tasks. There is a great deal of other work that I need to go and talk to him about to sort it out. Now, those are the discussions that will happen this afternoon. Now I have made my primary duty to report to this Assembly. I know what I want to do, but I have the Chief Minister to respect in discharging functions which are legal functions, and I bring the attention, I am responsible for quite a number of massive portfolios, and there is a proper process that needs to be done if I am to go completely, or I'm to go partially, or what he wants to do. He has not accepted it, and we've not yet come to that, and that's why I am still, at the moment, responsible for these areas, accountable for them, and accountable to answering questions to this Assembly. And I would just prefer, if I may, just to be able to make my statement. I will be brief. I hope there's not going to be many questions, but if somebody does have something, then let them be answered in the full glare of public opinion, where I can be held properly to account. That is what I think an obligation of a parliamentarian is, sir.
Sir, is it not possible for the Minister and the Assistant Chief Minister to get together this afternoon over lunch, decide it, and then come back and make a statement, and we'll know if he's resigning from what?
Griffey. I'm sorry that members find themselves in this position. I'm sorry the Assistant Chief Minister finds himself in this position. And speaking for myself, I accept entirely that he has found himself in that way, acting bona fide and not intending to show disrespect to the Assembly. Nonetheless, the fact is that he has made a statement in which he says, I shall be writing to the Chief Minister offering to step aside from my responsibilities as Assistant Chief Minister. And in my language, that means that he's offering to resign. That makes it a personal statement. You either make it as a personal statement, Senator Joseph, or if it's to be a statement with official responsibility, then I will.
So,
that language has to come out, because I don't understand
I want to
what
get
it means.
this statement out. It is parliamentary, and I stand. If your ruling is that it is a personal statement, I regret that, but I will make a personal statement.
I regret that is the ruling.
I regret that situation has arisen, because this will be the last time, if that is the case, that I am able to answer questions to this Assembly in this regard. So I make a personal statement, sir, on your ruling. So I wish to echo the disappointment and dismay of the Chief Minister with the findings of the Controller and Auditor General report in respect of the Jersey Innovation Fund. That dismay is, of course, shared by members of this Assembly and many islanders. However, whilst disappointed, I was not surprised. The report it documented shared many of my own concerns that I have expressed on repeated occasions to the GIF accounting officer, the Chief Minister, my own accounting officer, and the Chief Executive of the States and others. As the Controller and Auditor General recognised, the Jersey Innovation Fund was and remains a positive idea. Our future economic growth and diversification depends on competition and innovation. The portfolio of innovation was given to me in November 2014. However, legal responsibility for the Jersey Innovation Fund was not transferred to the Chief Minister by this Assembly and then delegated to the Assistant Chief Minister, i.e. me, until January 2016. This delay has prevented me from being able to discharge the role. That said, as the Assistant Chief Minister with responsibility for innovation, I accept without reservation all the recommendations of the Controller and Auditor General in full. I have not been able to comment on the operational charges to the GIF since the CAG launched her inquiry. To do so would have prejudiced her work. However, I can confirm that many of the recommendations have already been implemented because of the actions taken last year. The Chief Minister last week committed to review of political involvement with GIF, and separately through the Chief Executive of the States, a review of officer involvement. I asked if he would do a review, that's the Chief Minister, and I endorse this approach wholeheartedly. I will fully support and willingly to participate in both inquiries as required, in addition to those of scrutiny. I take little...
I wonder if one could please show some courtesy to the Assistant Minister.
I take little comfort from the absence of personal criticism in the report, and it is for those inquiries to further investigate individual actions and to report without fear or favour to the Chief Minister. I will answer for all of the actions during my time of political responsibility, but it is for others, perhaps, to do likewise. The approval of the operating model, review of loan applications, collation and review of due diligence, loan approval and subsequent monitoring involved a large number of individuals, including the advisory board, officials and ministers. Fundamentally, ministers can only act upon the advice that they are given. When that advice is not comprehensive or potentially misleading, where a timely response to concerns is not forthcoming, then ministers or assistant ministers cannot exercise their duties efficiently. Under the period of my official responsibility for GIF, since January the 1st, 2016, only one further advance, an additional loan, was made. That was a second tranche of a loan agreed in 2015 and granted to a borrower that is in compliance with their repayment terms. As confirmed previously, no loans are under consideration and no further drawdowns are pending. Let me make it clear, sir. The board has been disbanded and the fund has been closed with the monies safeguarded for future innovation projects. Members of this Assembly, members of the public deserve to know who did what and when. The Controller and Auditor General report already provides much of the detail for those who care to read it fully and objectively. Now all matters is in the full disclosure of the facts to the commissioned reviews, and I am always happy to be judged on my own actions. Having said that, I do not and refuse to be a distraction from these reviews. Coverage of the last few days and comments by some members of this Assembly risk overshadowing the much-needed environment of objectivity for those reviews. I have no wish to be a distraction or a media sideshow during this review period, and so I shall be writing to the Chief Minister offering to step aside from my responsibilities as Assistant Chief Minister. I am prepared to stand up and be counted, as I always said I would. I am prepared to be held to account. I know I can sleep at night, safe in the knowledge that I did everything I could to resolve the issues I found when I eventually inherited the full responsibilities for the Jersey Innovation Fund. Sir, I have fully and properly discharged my responsibilities. I wanted to take questions, sir. I will take questions as appropriate from other bodies in another place. And I shall be making no further comments or public comments in relation to this until these inquiries have been completed. And I thank members for their time and to this time for the support that they have showed me.
Propose the adjournment?
Propose the adjournment, sir.
State stand adjourned until 2:15.